The Minnesota Vikings found a hidden gem amidst all their NFL draft criticism, as a recent report reveals an absolute steal that Kwesi and company pulled off just outside of the draft that is going to give this team a huge depth boost and a plan for the future. We're going to be breaking down all that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first, if you're not a part of the 1,200 subscribers that we currently have on the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any of the updates when they drop. It's going to be a busy week ahead for Vikings fans, so stay tuned for all the updates we have. And with that, let's hop straight into the first topic of the day, which is an absolute gem. So the Minnesota Vikings added only 5 players in the NFL draft, which is tied for the fewest players selected by any team in the league this draft. But they have signed an impressive group of undrafted free agents to strengthen their rookie class, one of which has the potential to make the rest of the league realize that they made a big mistake not drafting him. And that is who I'm talking about, is Joe Huber from the University of Wisconsin as an offensive lineman, guard specifically, and this guy is an absolute unit. The Vikings signed Wisconsin guard Joe Huber as part of their 2025 UDFA class. Huber began his college career in 2020 at University of Cincinnati, where he spent the first 3 years of his career. His first year as a starter with Cincinnati came in 2022, where he logged 13 starts at right tackle, transferred to Wisconsin ahead of the 2023 season following his head coach Luke Fickell, who was named the Badgers' new head coach. There he started all 25 games he appeared in 2023 and 2024. So this guy, he's got a lot of college experience, especially in a great conference with a great program in the University of Wisconsin. They definitely have a long history of creating some pretty badass players, and this guy is absolutely one of them because he went undrafted as an offensive guard in the draft class. He scored an 8.93 RAS out of a possible 10.00. This is ranked 186 out of 1736 offensive guards from 1987 to 2025. And when you look at the RAS numbers, the relative athletic score, it's a great website if you guys want to go and check it out as far as comparing different draft prospects, all their combine results and things like that. When you look at the numbers that he got, the height 8.75, insane. Weight, he's a big boy, but that big boy on an interior offensive lineman is exactly what you need. You got the vertical and you got the broad jump there, pretty solid. You got the 3-cone, he's very agile, so that is something that is going to be very useful for a team that likes to run the ball a lot. The shuttle, not the greatest, but still, he still has some agility in there. 40-yard, 20-yard, 10-yard split, those aren't entirely the best things for offensive linemen anyway, so it doesn't really work in his favor. But the bottom line is, this guy was an absolute steal for the Vikings. I'm very happy that they were able to not only bolster the offensive line, but add even more depth pieces, because we saw what happened last year when Cam Robinson stepped in for Christian Darrisaw. Darrisaw went out for the year with a horrible injury. We had to go out and frantically sign a free agent. Then you had Brian O'Neill go down in the playoff game. We had to frantically sub in somebody as that next man up. Yeah, it was our last game of the season, unfortunately, but it's one of those situations where Minnesota doesn't want to have to be on their toes or on their heels, really, trying to find a replacement if there's an injury, because offensive lineman injuries happen all the time. Whether it's a veteran, whether it's a young buck, they tend to happen because those guys are just in the trenches getting piled on, taking awkward falls, awkward twists, and things like that, where we see a lot of injuries become very common. And with Minnesota, with the depth that they had going into this draft, it was still solid, but we went and got Donovan Jackson, so we don't have to rely on Blake Brandel or a potential competition for it. And then we go out and get a guy like Huber, who is an absolute unit. Like I said, he's a big boy. He's going to be able to be a great run blocker and somebody that Minnesota can hopefully have as someone for the future, because they signed Will Fries to a massive contract this offseason to fill one of their starting guard positions, and followed it up by selecting Ohio State guard Donovan Jackson, like I said, in the first round. So it's possible that the team has already solidified their starting guard spots, but Jackson has some versatility to play guard or tackle like we saw him do in his final year at Ohio State, which could allow him to be the future starting right tackle for the Vikings if they think he would be an upgrade to Brian O'Neill, who's been there for a very long time. Huber also has the flexibility to project guard and tackle. I think he has a great chance at making the Vikings 53-man roster as a key rotational player, and I think he offers a ton of upside to develop into a future starter. And this is coming from A to Z Sports, going into how the Vikings really just pulled off an absolute steal with this dude. And like I said, when you look at the RAS numbers, they're very good, and even more so when you look at how he ranked, not only just out of his current draft class, but from 1987 to 2025. This dude was in the high rankings, and this is someone who went undrafted. No team wanted to take a chance on him, but Minnesota did. And yes, the numbers are pretty solid, but this is something that Minnesota is definitely going to be excited about for the future. But the main thing I kind of want to think about here is something that I was texting about with Kirk when we went out and when we were looking at these guys, looking at their undrafted free agents that they went out and got compared to the guys that they drafted in the draft within those rounds. If you went out and got a guy like Huber, yes, it's great to just bolster it down with Donovan Jackson and with Huber. Those are guys that are going to be elite in protecting JJ McCarthy, hopefully for lots of years to come. So I fully understand that. However, if this was something where Donovan Jackson could have slipped to the second round or into the third round, or maybe Vikings traded up to get him in the second round, and then you still take Huber as an undrafted free agent, why didn't you go get Malachi Starks when you had the chance, or Nick Emenwari, or someone to just be the replacement for Harrison Smith when he eventually leaves? Yes, Josh Metellus, they're working on a contract extension. If you want to check out Kirk's video when he mentioned it in Andrew Van Ginkel's extension, go and check that out. But Josh Metellus is somebody that the Vikings want to bring back. However, Harrison Smith likely will not be back next year. And yeah, we have Theo Jackson. He still is an unproven commodity, as is Malachi Starks. And Theo Jackson has been through a bit of injury troubles as well. Haven't seen him start in the regular season as of yet. So that's going to be something where Minnesota fans are definitely eager to see. We know this organization is very eager for it as well. But is he the guy that can be the replacement for Harrison Smith? And especially if you can't extend Josh Metellus, then there is 2.5 basically spots or 1.5 spots to fill in, where if Theo Jackson isn't fully trusted with that, that's where the 0.5 comes in. And then you have to fill in for Harrison Smith and for Josh Metellus if that's the case. So that's something where I look at it and say, hey, Minnesota got an absolute dog in an undrafted class. They got an absolute dog in the draft in the first round that a lot of people were criticizing that they shouldn't have taken as soon as they did, when they could have sat back and got Jonas Savaiinaia from Arizona maybe as a potential possibility, or just gone out and get a guy that could just bolster on the offensive line and just be serviceable. Vikings didn't want to settle for good enough. They wanted to go for greatness. That's why they got Jackson. But when you bring in Huber, who has all this untalked about hype around him, really not necessarily hype, but the numbers just speaking for itself as far as his draft grade, as far as how he just projected coming out of college. It's something where if Minnesota was going to take him anyways, why wouldn't they have just taken him when they could have, and then they not just gone and got Malachi Starks? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to why they just went and just hoarded all these offensive linemen and not have gone out and gotten someone in the secondary. Yeah, they went out and got some undrafted pieces here and there. They did go out and get some secondary pieces, but it still wasn't a big name that is going to push the needle in the same way that Malachi Starks likely will push the needle for that Ravens secondary on that team. He was somebody that was projected to go to the Ravens, but Minnesota would have had an opportunity to steal him. They had that opportunity. They didn't take it. But what do you guys think about all of this? Do you guys like the possibility that, hey, we have an absolute two dog set as far as rookies go with Donovan Jackson and Joe Huber? Are you guys happy about having both of those? Or would you rather have gotten one of them and Malachi Starks or Emenwari as a result? Let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments about all of this and how excited you are for this Vikings offensive line this season. It might be the first time, maybe in my lifetime as a Vikings fan, that we finally are seeing a great offensive line, at least since the Brett Favre season. I'm not going to say Brett Favre days because we only had a season and a half of them. But that Brett Favre season, he had a lot of protection in that backfield, especially when Adrian Peterson was carving it up. We had some really good dogs on that line. Even if Phil Lodeholt took a lot of holding penalties, we still had a really good offensive line at the time. Since then, it's been a lot of Swiss cheese offensive lines, but now we are finally in a position where Kwesi Co, they wanted to make sure that bringing in JJ McCarthy as hopefully the biggest franchise quarterback that we've had since Fran Tarkenton, they want to make sure that he is protected as much as possible. So they went out and got the best of the best that they could get. But let us know what you guys have to say about all this down in the comments below. And stay tuned for our next video. We're going to be covering everything to do with some of the free agency moves and contract moves that the Vikings have been doing this offseason. So stay tuned for that. You won't want to miss it. But with this, I've been your host, Griffen. Take care.